Ladies and gentlemen, while we prepare our speakers with mics so that you can hear them, my name is Thras Moraitis. I'm one of the Board of Trustee members. I don't know what my number is, but it's not far from the 7 that George quoted earlier, which means that I've been in a greatly privileged position to watch Reload Greece grow from what was essentially an idea to what you see today, the culmination of 5 years of continuous and exponential growth. An organization that's professionalized, that's grown in number, but more importantly, that's grown its impact exponentially. And that's a great credit to the team and those who have been involved. And on that point, I think that it's important to remember that Reload Greece itself is like a startup, even though it's a different type of startup. Which 5 years ago, as I said, was nothing more than a few ideas, and today is a very established organization. And so, very much like many of the entrepreneurial startups that are represented in the room, Reload Greece itself has been through the journey, and therefore, I suspect, has some more stories to share and some thoughts. It's following a relatively upbeat conversation that we've just had. I'm very pleased to continue in that vein. And talk about what I consider to be one of the most seminal events that's occurred in the Greek entrepreneurial space, which is the granting of some 200 million euros by the EIF into the Equity Fund, which is designed to accelerate investment in early stage ventures. And that's been done through existing or new venture vehicles that can deploy that money. I have to say that Nikos Bonatzos is not the only one who believes that there may be insufficient deal flow in Greece to meet that 200 million euros over the next 2 or 3 years. And the reason I make that point is that that probably means that the funds that are involved and have been tasked to look after that money will have to look outside of Greece to the diaspora for opportunities for investment. And for us as Reload Greece, that's a source of great excitement because we believe that makes for a perfect collaboration, and we look forward to finding a way of collaborating and making the EquiFund a great success together. At this point, I'd like to introduce our panelists who are going to shed more light on what they're doing. Some of them, or most of them, are partners in the venture funds that have received the EquiFund funding, and so we look to them to tell us a little bit about their plans, what they plan to do, what they're interested in investing in. But I'd like to start with George Kametas, who is the head of business banking at the National Bank of Greece. His title belies the role that he plays in the entrepreneurial space, as under his auspices is a number of entrepreneurial activities, some of which already have a strong collaboration with Reload Greece. And in fact, the institution is already an investor in some of the funds. So welcome, George. Following George, I'd like to introduce the partners who are representing a subset of the funds who have received the funds from the EIF. Myrto Papathanou, partner at Metavallon. Welcome, Myrto. Sotiris Papantonopoulos Mantopoulos, partner at Uni.Fund. Veremis, a partner at BigPi Venture, and George Tziralis from Marathon. Welcome. Finally, and with some excitement, I have to say, for a number of reasons, I'd like to introduce the moderator, Ioannis Tsakiris. Ioannis is the head of division under whose mandate the EIF funding has been given through the EquiFund, and in my opinion is one of the driving forces behind this good news event. A great supporter of Greece's entrepreneurial environment, and in fact the perfect person to moderate the session. More importantly, of course, he's the boss of these venture funds. And yes, even venture capitalists have bosses. So I hand over to you, Yanni, to carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thras, for the introduction. Well, venture capitalists, they do not have bosses. They have investors. And investors are looking, let's say, very thoroughly what venture capitalists are doing, first and mostly to, let's say, to preserve their money that they have invested. So I would also like to thank the panelists, and I have prepared some questions for them, and I would like to ask them to be sharp, apparently not short, but sharp and to the point, like real venture capitalists. And before getting into the questions, I would like to say a few words about what we have done last year in Greece. European Investment Fund belongs to the European Investment Bank Group, and what we are doing is trying to support and grant access to SMEs, access to finance, primarily through equity investments. So throughout the European Union, we are investing in private equity and venture capital funds, and in turn, those venture capital funds are investing into high-growth SMEs. In Greece, what we have done last year is we have created a platform, equity platform, where the Hellenic Republic had contributed 200 million euros of structural funds. We, as European Investment Fund, have also contributed 60 million. European Investment Bank, another 60 million. And private investors, for the time being, have contributed more than 120 million euros. So in total, more or less, €500 million is available through 9 venture capital and private equity funds that we have selected to be invested in Greek high-growth SMEs, in particular startups, technology ventures, as well as extrovert and exporting SMEs. So this is about EquiFund, and we believe that by doing this, we are not only supporting those companies, but we definitely contribute to the growth of the country. And also, we are establishing an ecosystem when it comes to equity financing, which is something that didn't exist in Greece, or at least it was not very systematic. So we're looking forward that those funds will be successful, create wealth for the investors and the investees, contribute to the growth of the country, and also try to, let's say, get back some brain that went away from Greece. So I would like to start with Myrto, ladies first. And I would like to ask you, Myrto, how do you see the Greek innovation landscape compared to other countries in Europe? You think that it's competitive? What do you think are the, let's say, the characteristics of our landscape?
Mm-hmm. So thank you for the question. Thank you as well to Reload Greece for the organization, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm representing Metavallon. We started our activity earlier this year. We're one of the funds on the innovation window of the EquiFund, which means that we're focusing on investing at very early stages. So we're providing pre-seed and seed capital to companies that have a competitive edge. They're doing something innovative, both in the ICT sector and in different sectors. So with regards to innovation, what we've been seeing the last 9 months that we're in the market is that we see a large number of ideas coming from young entrepreneurs. Some of them are stemming from research and universities, from research centers and universities. Some of them are stemming from the market. So I think there's quite a large flow of innovation. So there's a lot of raw talent, and there's a lot of things that could be moving forward. I think the challenge is translating this innovation into something that is commercially viable. So it's hard to compare with other countries. I'm not sure I have the context to compare it with other countries, but I think instinctively you have a lot of investment that has been done both from the public and the private side on the education. There's been a lot of R&D investment that has been done. And our challenge now is to translate that in businesses that are actually competitive, that they can address the world market, and they can produce products at the end of the day that have value to the market. I think there's, again, a lot of good raw material, a lot of innovation there. Let's see how we all fare with the entrepreneurs coming first and the financiers coming on the second place on translating those into actual value-added products.
Thanks, Myrto. Sotiris, we had a discussion in the break before. If you can tell us, how do you see the deal flow in your fund when it comes actually to quantity, but quality as well?
Well, let me just briefly introduce ourselves. We are Uni.Fund. Uni stands for university. We work together with universities and research centers to, that's where we're mainly looking for. And part of our mission there is to, create a system with, education about entrepreneurship and a stream of pipeline. And we're going to work with Reload Greece on this as well, hopefully, to create a sustainable system that for each university with entrepreneurial centers and competitions, you create deal flow and make people aware in Greece that if they work hard and they put the minds together and create a team, at the end of the day, there is funding for the, so that's a motive on its own. So right now, I'll be honest, I mean, it was really disappointing, the level of skills and ambition in the Greek universities. It's my personal opinion. The deal flow, we've seen a lot of efforts, but there are a lot of them, a large majority is focused internally, and they lack the global ambition and outlook in general. But this is something that, we will work to change. And I think in this generation breed of, VCs that you have like examples of successful entrepreneurs guiding the new startups, that will work very effectively, I hope. Mm-hmm. But not, but we need to create the culture of entrepreneurship within the universities, which is lacking, but EquiFund will help towards that goal.
I think that's encouraging.
Yeah. May I also add something to this?
No, also, what I also wanted to see is that our educational system is not adaptive and does not produce the new skills that are necessary. So we don't create, new AI or blockchain so there needs to be a reform in the university system as well to produce these skills as well.
Thank you.
As a short introduction, my name is Tziralis. I work for Marathon Venture Capital. We are active in this market one way or another for the last 10 years. So we did the first startups, the first community events, the first investments, then the first successful exit. So as a team, we've done Backsense, Taxibit. We were the first institutional investor in companies like Workable. And we've also had our fair amount of failures along the way as well. From where we stand, both the quality and the quantity of the deal flow that we've got to see in the last year and a half that we're active in this market is unprecedented. As a matter of fact, we have reviewed about 1,000 cases, and we have already invested in 8 of them, which is, with this fund, we plan to do 15 to 20 investments, and a few quarters after we started, we have already allocated pretty much half of the fund. And we believe this is the best breed of companies that we have ever made. So this is also another perspective for you to take into account.
Marco, as a world traveler, what is the connection of ideas, let's say the ideas that you are looking in BigPi? How many of them are coming from Greece, how many from abroad, and what do you see there?
Yeah, okay, again, from me, a short intro. We're, I guess, the latest fund. We started in July. BigPi is a collection of people that have been entrepreneurs, like myself with Upstream and Persaro and that. Bruno Bolsons, who's now Tesla, but also created his own company in the automated vehicle sector and sold it to Gresenbach. We're very happy we brought a Belgian in Greece for a change instead of the brain drain. And then we've got Alex Eleftheriadis, who's the co-founder of Video and the professor, which is a big competitor of Cisco in the States and a very successful company. He's the CTO and also a professor of computer science at Columbia. And we also have Aristos Doxiadis and George Kasselakis, who were part of the team that built EquiFund. So I think we got a good mix of actual entrepreneurs, people who've been on the battlefield and know how much it hurts and how much it also gives you pleasure. But, we also have the venture capitalists on the team that have had experience. Now, truth of the matter is venture capital has not been successful in Greece in the past 10 years. I mean, the returns, even of a successful fund like EquiFund, are meager compared to any VC abroad. That's the truth. We've had some exits that are remarkable given how poor the Greek environment has been. So, a TaxiBeat or an eFood are remarkable achievements given the Greek environment. However, we're talking about exits in the tens of millions, which are certainly not enough to sustain a venture capital sort of bright future for Greece. Thankfully, we're seeing some companies like Workable, where I was with Nikos and Spiros. Spiros was my CTO. Nikos was my head of sales. They started a company. When they left Upstream, I was their angel investor. And they now have a sort of close to 200 million company, and that's optimistic. They haven't exited yet, so there's way to go. You've got Persaro, that was also actually built out of Upstream, and they're now in the region of 400 million valuation. Again, they haven't exited, but they've got Goldman Sachs on board. They've got Bain. So, they're doing well. So we've got some good cases going and happening. At the same time, I have to say that the deal flow is disappointing. And really, you mentioned world traveler. That's going to come in handy, being a world traveler. And why do I say this? Because I think that, the big challenge I see now after having looked at this project and worked for about 5 months, although we officially launched in July, is if we can bring together a lot of the talent that exists in London, Boston, New York, the Valley, and in terms of sort of cosmopolitan view, commercial experience, the appetite to conquer the world, the perception that the world is your oyster. It's not something that is threatening, it's something that it gives you opportunity. And you combine that with some very solid engineering talent in Greece, our recipe, and I won't hide it, our recipe is founders who may be in Greece, but mostly I would say abroad, who have the aspiration to build R&D in Greece. And I have to say, the Greek educational system, against all odds, does produce excellent mathematicians in terms of the basic core skills. So, let's take Tesla, for example. Why did Tesla build a little, Bruno is involved in that, in Athens, a little center. The reason was that, one of their key guys in the States, who's Greek, thought that, if you're building motor design, if you're doing motor design, you need good mathematicians, you need good software guys, you need good engineers, and that is available in Greece. So I see a combination of these two worlds coming together to produce what can be actually quite promising.
Just a clarification, with George Kametas, we share the same role. So as also an investor, I keep separate, let's say, part of this panel so that to discuss ourselves. So let's, for the time being, focus on those that are doing the deals. I would like to ask you, how do you see potential co-investments in Greek companies from venture capital funds abroad? I mean, that's a question for whoever thinks has a view there. You think that you can see in the near future co-investments from foreign funds in Greece, particularly in the startup sector?
We're actively going to solicit it. It's part of our, we will definitely look for it. and that's something we should be exploiting.
George, you have also some experience on that.
Well, I have to share the following. The best companies from our portfolio, at least, are going to raise some follow-up capital from some of the best funds in the world. That's the target. And we believe that this is not the difficult part. The difficult part is to actually build a great company, not to attract some of the best investors out there. As long as you do the first, you are going to also be successful on the latter. And we are getting our hands dirty on that.
Plus, it's already happening, by the way. If you look at some Greek companies like Workable, like Persado, they're already at, but it's what George said, they're great companies. So as a natural result of that, of course, they're attracting Bains and Goldmans and Greylocks and, all these great VCs. But yeah, George is right.
And I think it's the evolution as a company progresses and goes towards building a global company that's relevant and has a product that has market validation. It's natural that bigger funds take over. I think at the beginning of every company, it makes sense to seek for capital locally because it's easier and it will get you your validation, it will get you your first hires and what you need for the first steps faster. So that's why we're all here, to try and cultivate that side. But absolutely, to be relevant, you have to attract international capital. We're doing that very aggressively as well in Metavallon. We've made investments in being part of global venture networks. We're part of the Draper Venture Network, and the idea there is exactly that, to feed in companies that start with pre-seed and seed investments from our side, and have co-investment opportunities with other funds that specialize in Series A, in Series B, and later. From all over the world, be it the States or Europe or Asia. So that's the target, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another question that definitely is also of interest to the audience is, which sector you think that has the most potential? Okay, we're talking about technology, but there are several, let's say, niches that you think a venture capital fund should look for potential investment, but also an entrepreneur should seek to pursue an idea. Marco?
On a macro level, I mean, when we were designing the fund, BigPi, I think, there's been a shift in venture capital from low-tech efforts like marketplaces, which had their role and were really successful, even software as a service, certain lighter tech companies on that front. But because there's an overpopulation of such companies right now, and especially California, produces, thousands of such companies, I think, movement into deeper tech, which is sort of more defensible and has more ties to academics or ex-academics or even universities, does have value in the natural cycle of how VCs evolve. So, right now, I think it's quite important to do such deals. Unfortunately, Greece does not have an organized university system that encourages tech transfer, that encourages sort of spin-offs, spin-outs. That doesn't exist. However, we do have a very strong academic community as Greeks. Within Greece, shining examples of professors who are harnessing their own teams, even outside the context, really officially, of the university, but also are very well connected to other professors around the world in top, institutions like MIT or Stanford, et cetera. So, the Greeks are a statistical anomaly in terms of their representation in top-tier universities around the world. And, they're a lot more than you would expect given a population of 10 million people. So I think there is an opportunity for Greece, more so now that we're not talking about marketplaces. Because, by the way, a marketplace, someone who lives in the States has an unfair advantage. If you have a market that, when you start, already counts tens or hundreds of millions of people, how can you compete if you start in Greece with, a 10 million population? Whereas with tech, deep tech, and academic-based research, you don't have that barrier, and I think we can play to our strengths in terms of the Greek overeducated population, which also produces some excellent academics.
And also, if I may add to this, all of us invest in very early stage companies. So it's not that we focus primarily on some specific sectors, but first of all, we're looking for excellent founders, right? So we're looking for people. We're not focusing, let's say, on tourism or shipping or you name it. And as long as we find exceptional founders building some pretty unique and exciting products, all of us are going to take a close look at that. So that's the idea.
Sotiris, you're...
I agree mostly with both. We could change a little bit the incentives in the Greek research mechanism and for the tech transfer part to become more easy and the motivations of the researchers to be towards commercialization rather than just research perpetually. Which is the current status, but we do see a lot of deep tech and these shining, professors that are just fighting against the system, really. But and I agree with George mostly. It's people. It's the entrepreneur. That so we're agnostic, and we're looking for great people. And if they have a defensible technology, that's even better.
I actually want to add something to what Marcos was saying just before about the representation of Greek academics in general around the world. So I've been here since Wednesday. I'm staying until Wednesday, and we've kind of planned a tour of the UK, if you will, so not very long, but we're spending a couple of days in London, then Oxford, Cambridge. We visited last week. We're going up to Manchester next week. And in Manchester alone, for example, there are 31 Greek professors and academics and researchers involved directly in projects that have to do with entrepreneurship. So I'm discussing engineering, STEM in general, entrepreneurship, economics, and business. So I'm not discussing medicine or anything else. 31 in Manchester alone. You look at Cambridge, the person who's heading the entrepreneurship center there is Greek. The same in Oxford. So there are a lot of people that are there to give you a support network to look at what can be achieved, again, with an entrepreneurial spin that stems out from deeper tech as we move away from the light bets that are the natural beginning of VC.
Can I mention an example, which I found really inspirational? Exactly what you're saying. Two guys who were professors at King's in London working on smart materials, and material science is actually quite a complex field. In one of them, his wife suffered from breast cancer, and because she had to then constantly do mammograms following the operation, and he was a materials expert, he thought I should apply my knowledge to trying to optimize these mammograms and find a smart material where the mammogram can penetrate the skin faster and more effectively and without hurting the patient, etc. Bottom line, he went into like a research to look at this, and a company was born out of. He never found a solution on the mammogram, but he started a company called Metamaterials with his fellow academics. And I say this because most people think academia doesn't fit well with business. They moved to Halifax in Canada because that was the best place in terms of incentives, et cetera, et cetera. And to cut a long story short, this company now has contracted he's received a contract from Airbus to create materials for aircraft that stop laser attacks or UV lights. They have a massive order from Airbus. It's the most cutting-edge technology. And it took us like 4 or 5 months at BigPi to convince these guys to build some R&D in Greece. And we managed to convince them, and we're sort of in the process of doing a deal with them. And the reason I say this is because there is gold hidden in such teams. Most of these people, I think, do want to have some presence in Greece. They do want to build for emotional as well as practical reasons a team in Greece that is more loyal, cheaper, I guess easier to communicate with. And I think that, there are plenty of opportunities like that we should definitely be inspired by and look at.
And may I also add, there is also a lot of teams we've been discussing. For Greece, because of the Brexit, they might be willing to relocate another foot somewhere in the EU in order to be able to trade easier. And We find also the appeal of the lower cost, very good labor, but also Costco. The fact that there's a logistics center there in Greece, we find it quite appealing in certain cases as well.
But just to add something to that, and I guess we're not doing the whole question after question, but maybe it's nice to have a dialogue like that. Marcos mentioned Halifax and Canada in general in terms of what made sense for a new business from an incentives perspective. And that's very critical, and I guess, Mr. Fouliarakis, you asked before from a policy perspective what there is to be done. So the policy there is very aggressive on R&D, financing R&D, so the companies get tax credit in terms of what they spend on R&D. And they're also very aggressive on what it means to attract talent, again, related to the remuneration that the individual gets, the engineers, and what it means at the end of the day to what they take home. So I think there's 70% compared to a person coming in with an engineering role. I think they have, again, about 70% tax credit in their personal income taxation to be employed in a company in Canada, for example. This can make a massive change in Greece because you're talking, Sotiris mentioned before, labor that's competitive. I think it's actually value for money engineering. So you have very good level of engineering at low cost. However, you do need to be very aggressive on attracting the best people and attracting people as the companies scale. So people who will be taking gross remunerations between 40 and 100,000 will make a huge difference if those people are better remunerated, more confident that they can have a very stable and good environment around them and what it means to their professional life. So that will make a huge difference from day one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we are very competitive in the low end, but at the high end, I mean, I'm also an entrepreneur. We have engineers, right? So they make, say, cost to company 5,000, the engineer will take home 2,200. Cost to company 5,000 for a Dutch company, the engineer will take home 4,000. So we're having our engineers moving. So that's an unfair disadvantage, competitive disadvantage.
Oh, that's indeed. What I wanted to add, the personal comment on what you said before about the, how can I say, which is a very good news, the over-representation of Greeks in the academic world. On the other hand, I think might not be very, the disadvantage might be that not all of those great academics qualify for CEOs, which unfortunately the majority of Greek, and I'm saying particularly Greek academics, they want to be a CEO, which not all of the time, let's say, is efficient. So they should stay there, produce
most
technology.
Of them are interested to be CEOs, though. I mean, most of them are interested to commercialize their technology and are quite open to professional.
At my time,
CEOs.
it was.
It's changing, I think.
It's quite difficult.
But at the end, we invest in teams, right? And
That's true. That's true.
And with complementary skills.
I'll say I'm talking about the CEO in particular.
But you're right.
Who needs special skills. I just wanted to ask you, and that's, again, it's a question for all of you, and I think it's very, very important for the audience. What advice you would give to entrepreneurs on how to approach a venture capital fund, your fund, so that, or another fund, so to, let's say, to have more chances to get financing? A part of the idea, of course, that has to be sustainable. What you would tell them to do, how to go about it?
You're more experienced, you tell us.
I think there is a great public discourse on how to approach investors. And I think we should start talking about how to build a great company instead. So it's not, rocket science. For example, in our case, you may just send us an email at start@marathon.vc, and that's it. You shouldn't overthink about it. You'd rather spend this time to think about how to build a better company.
Yeah, it's really easy to approach us. We have.
I can give you a shortcut that my partner Aristos, who's an experienced venture capitalist, told me, which I found kind of tedious when he told me the 6 T's, and he always writes the 6 T's on the wall, and it's really the things that we're looking for, right? Condensed into 6 T's so that you all remember what it's about. So the first T is team, and it's probably the most important thing that we look at. I'm amazed that a lot of teams approach us and they have very incomplete CVs, very incomplete CVs, like global experience in banking. Where, how, I mean, at early stage investment, the team is everything. I mean, you need to really, above anything else, sell us who the team is. And also, we are very averse to entirely individual efforts. The new age companies, or the companies we invest in, companies like Upstream or Persaro or Workable, they're group efforts. Michael Jordan said, talent wins games, the team wins championships, right? And they are, from the very beginning, teams of people who have each of them shares in the company. They're not individual efforts. So team is number one. Number two for us is the total market size. So, if you're as good as you might be, if the total addressable market you're attacking is small, it's difficult for us, right? Because it means that, we cannot grow to the expectations that we have. That's the second T, total addressable market. I'm reading them from Aristo's list. Trenches is the third T. Trenches is basically, how can you protect yourself, right? So you've done something great, you're the first, but then others will copy it, naturally. So what defense do you have? Trenches. So typical trenches would be things like patents, IP, anything that can protect you. It might not be IP or patents. It might be, I don't know, an excellent network that you've built or something else, but trenches is the third. The fourth is tech. In our team, I'm the least technical, but if you get Bruno on the case or Alex Eleftheriadis, it better be good. These guys, will look at your technology inside out, and it better work. And technology, obviously, in that sense, in terms of whether it works or how exciting it might be, is important. And then we have traction. What have you done? Who are you working with? Give us specifics, not general slides with a client list. We need specifics. I'm involved with Airbus building their filter for pilots because laser attacks are really more common than you think, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, it's the most menial, sometimes also very important, tasks and roadmap. We need to be very clear that you know exactly what you're doing, because as good as a VC might be, in the end, it gives money and some value. Or you need to do the rest. So 6 T's.
Yeah, and if I may add from our side, we also, you can approach us at metavallon.vc. We do it a bit more structured than everyone else. So if you send us an email with a deck, it will probably get lost. Or if you send me something on LinkedIn or an email, it's just the sheer amount of submissions we get is too much, might get overlooked. We also think that when you're approaching a venture capitalist, you should be serious about the process. You should be very much at a stage where money is what's missing at this stage, and not the rest that were mentioned by the colleagues. So if you're approaching a VC, just make sure that you're asking for money and you're asking for a number of other things like connections to the industry, et cetera, but you have your core things figured out. So you have your team there, you have what you're looking at doing, you have some traction maybe, and you definitely have an execution plan. So Marcos mentioned the tasks, how you're going to do and how you're going to execute what you're describing is a lot more important than the general idea or even the underlying tech, et cetera. You have to be very, very clear and very adamant on what it is that you're looking at. So if you have something like that and you're at this stage that you're only missing money to continue, please submit your company at Metavallon VC. And we have a booth outside. We have those seeds, which is the seed funding we're providing. You won't find money in here, but you can actually plant those. And on the back, you can read the ingredients that we offer with this seed financing as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Myrto. I think it's about also time to George, who is representing National Bank of Greece, and National Bank of Greece, which it's a long-term supporter of, I would say, most of the novelties that are coming out in the financing sector. As the IEF, we had even the first microfinance guarantee agreement with National Bank of Greece back in Greece many years ago. And National Bank of Greece is participating as an investor in the innovation funds of EquiFund. So, George, how come NBG decided to be an active investor?
Well, it's consistency and opportunity. I mean, we've been involved in the venture capital world, at least within my knowledge, since 2000, with NBGI in Greece, then NBGI in London, investing in European companies. But then again, the whole period, the venture capital market in Greece was driven by bank-related venture capital, which is more mature companies, project finance, and obviously didn't incorporate into the radar the companies that we're discussing now. So for us, it was, we were there, so for us it's a big opportunity. As I'm working for business banking, so new companies, startups, for me, is the successful players that I will be working in the future. For us, it's very straightforward. We decided on the methodology. That was the critical part. Are we going to invest in all the funds through yourselves, distributing the funds equally to all 9 funds? Finally, due to our cap, we also are investors. We have our own fund and we invest. We decided to go and invest in selected companies. Actually, all the venture capital firms that are present here, we have invested in them, and we're very proud, and we're looking forward to their investments. Also, due to the fact that we also are investing, we have already invested in the last 2 years in approximately 10 companies in Greece. We're looking forward into co-investing with them when there is necessity and they require the additional funding, either for the local round or for the international rounds that we are.
You're talking about the NBG business seeds.
Yes.
So I think that's good for the audience to know that National Bank of Greece is also investing in startup technology companies through the NBG business seeds program.
For we built a program in the last 10 years that provides funding, both venture capital, equity placements, but also loans for growth companies. So we're helping companies in the growth area, starting from zero with equity financing turnover, but also up to 25 million turnover. We're assisting them in their next steps in Greece and abroad. We are also partners with Endeavor Greece. We are their banking partner in Greece. Endeavor, I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's an international company, networking, and they also have funds, okay? And we participate in their team in order to address the funding needs of the companies that are part of Endeavor. So for us, funding, in our side, it's a long-term necessity for the entrepreneur. At the initial stage, it's going to be equity, but it will never stop being an issue for the entrepreneur. Equity is extremely expensive. You're losing part of your company. So progressively, after you are helped, you have to have other means of...
And as an investor, what are your main concerns?
Well, for the time being is for all the teams to set up. The quality of the people and the due diligence that the EIF performed for us was a stamp of confidence for us to enter without performing long due diligences. But what really is of worry of us is the deal flow. The deal flow. Because in the last few years we had more money to spend, to invest, and we couldn't invest, frankly, but we are focusing strictly in Greece as a first step initially. We help them then abroad, but initially we invest in Greece. We didn't find the deal flow that we were expecting to have. So we underutilized the funds that we have. For us, it's very important what the whole team said here. All the funds, they're not focusing strictly in Greek companies, but in Greek interest companies. So this answers, hopefully, in the next couple of years our concern, I suppose.
Thank you, George. Just a last question, which is also for us, the 1 million question is, Myrto, what would you say about the EquiFund experiment? Sorry.
So I think I want to answer that by addressing what George discussed as well. So I think I heard it in the morning session. Nikos Bonatzos and Chris Chrysanthou actually used the word, I am scared with how much money is going into the Greek economy in this form. And it's something I've been hearing for 2 years. So 2 years ago when the discussion was started about the EquiFund and the program coming into Greece, the worry was that it's going to be a lot of money coming in the market. Then when the selection process started and we started fundraising, again, when every time I went to a private investor and told them about the program, their worry was exactly that. I actually went to Marcos as a private investor, and he told me, I'm kind of worried about what's going to happen with too much money in the market. And now today, again, after 2 years after the completion of the cycle, there's the discussion of whether it's too much money in the market. I don't think that will be the problem. I don't think that it will be a problem deploying the capital there. The problem and what the challenge will be is to find the people that will become part of those companies as they scale up. So we come from 10 years where the professional people in Greece have not developed as they should because the market wasn't growing, because there wasn't change of jobs, because the people weren't progressing, because the companies weren't expanding. So as those new seeds that we plant in the next 5 years go to a scale-up level, they're going to be missing people in product, they're going to be missing people in middle management, they're going to be missing people that will be their general managers or CEOs. So that's going to be the challenge in terms of the EquiFund experiment. I think it's a fantastic opportunity that's given to the country. And we need to see how to actually take this opportunity and make it happen. Taking people that have the experience from abroad is one of the things that we could be doing to ensure this use of capital is put to good use. I'm not worried about the deployment. I'm more worried in a good way. So I'm anticipating and see how we can build those companies with the right people to make them have a lot of value in the market.
George, since you also had the previous experience with Jeremy initiative.
Yeah, I think it's day and night, the market now compared to a few years ago. As I told, we've already pretty much allocated half of our fund within a few quarters. Half of our portfolio companies, and I'm talking about seed stage companies, already have Fortune 500 customers. This is unprecedented for us, unprecedented for the ecosystem, and we deeply believe that this is just the beginning. The caliber of people we get to meet and interact with every day, it's pretty off the charts. Our job is to help them go even further. And if you ask me, our challenge is how to make people even more ambitious. That's the core challenge, and everything else will follow up on that. Of course, we've picked our name, Marathon, for a purpose, right? We're still at the beginning, but we think that what's following is really great.
George, you want to make something as a final
For
comment?
me, it's a great opportunity. The fact that for the first time in Greece, they are the 3 pillars that you have designed. And it's not a selective process for the mid to large companies. So for me, it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's the perfect timing for companies to be invested in Greece. That's the most important thing.
Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time. I just wanted to add from the European Investment Fund perspective that we're also confident that the EquiFund experiment is going to be successful. We have done similar other experiments like this in other countries, and all were successful. We also believe that the Greek venture capital ecosystem will be established and will be sustainable for many years down the road. But also we are confident that investors will have returns, and the same we're expecting returns to be to the major investor in EquiFund, which is the Hellenic Republic, the Greek state, with 200 million euros. So some years later, we expect to give the money back with a profit. Thank you very much. For questions, I would suggest that, given that we are too many, you can approach us on one-to-one basis, given that we don't have time. Thank you.